So next, we have two speakers from the global consultancy Jacobs. Hiro is an award-winning architect who's worked on transport hubs all over the world. Hiro has taken a leading role in high-profile UK schemes, such as London's King's Cross Station and several stations on the Elizabeth line. Tim Kooyers is Jacobs' Growth Director. Now, Tim is currently involved in developing strategic frameworks and commercial strategies to originate deliverable infrastructure delivery programs. So in terms of this session, Hiro is going to be looking at the desirable places bit, and Tim is the models to deliver them. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Hiro and Tim.
Hello, good morning. So, I'm Hiro. My job is basically helping my clients turn their estates into better places. I usually use some other words, but it's too early in the morning to be mentioning them. But there are so many difficult sites, and there's plenty of challenges that I look forward to perhaps sharing some ideas with you on. Tim, do you want to say anything? Or shall we? Nicola did a great job. Okay. Is there a button? So I'm actually hoping that everybody in this room, especially after yesterday, some tremendous talks yesterday, really now know or have known what to sort of aim for when considering new interchanges or the remodeling of existing interchanges. If you don't know, come and find me afterwards. We'll have a good chat. These are just before and after photographs of King's Cross, a project I've been involved with over the years. And it's looking at the station campus as a whole, its placement and relationship with its very dynamic local context. And on the right is the view today, having turned the underutilized space of the image on the left into an amazing new vibrant new quarter, a new neighborhood. And we have many, many examples. I'll just choose the ones that I've been involved with, where you can look at examples of world-class interchange design delivery, from the big blockbusters, London Bridge, to perhaps some of the smaller ones. So we know the lessons, business as usual, right? Perhaps not. So we've all suffered the challenges faced today. The pressure is illustrated in this rather horrific curve on the screen, which shows that the budget deficit has been tremendous, particularly over the last few years. And we haven't really faced this problem since the World Wars. So how do we keep delivering what we want with so little money that's available, so much strain on the resources? Pandemic endures, and the cost of everything keeps rising. In the meantime, I think we've proven that we're a really resilient people. And not only that, we've become really demanding over that period. So we've changed ourselves in some way. We've changed our behavior in a lot of ways. And we've made very difficult decisions, particularly over the last few years. And we've actually decided to ask some very difficult questions as a result of that. So a sort of typical graphic that you'll recognize, it's showing that the behavior around transport, traveling has changed. The amount of work not from home has been decreasing. The amount of work from home has been exponentially growing. But what's also interesting here, I thought, were the graphs at the bottom of the page, where it's showing that through our changing behavior, we are actually more interested in keeping fit. We're more aware of being well. And also, interesting and importantly, we're wanting to spend more time and more effort socializing. So perhaps there's something in there that we ought to be embracing when we come to look at interchange design. This is from the US, because maybe the Americans are more comfortable talking about themselves. 140,000 people surveyed. And what the sort of graphic on the left-hand side is showing is that the more time people spend socializing, the less anxiety and stress they feel. So the blue is the increasing sort of amount of, I guess, happiness that they enjoy, with more time that they're spending socializing. What's interesting on the right-hand side, this is pre-pandemic, so some changing sort of graphics really since then, but what it still shows is that the days where we're able to socialize more, we're happier, we're less anxious, we're less stressed. Again, maybe that's something we should be embracing when we're designing for our people, whether it's an interchange or in fact the facilities that connect the interchanges. So, sorry, another London King's Cross image. So we know when we're wanting to deliver these interchanges, we want to be creating desirable places, or I would say generous places, and maximize the opportunities that they bring. So they need to be celebrating each location. Is it the history of the place? Be permeable, have lots of ways in, not this kind of ta-da entrance just in the front, lots of cheeky routes in. Be good neighbors. It's no longer acceptable that a transport interchange has a kind of a backside. I think we need to be really good neighbors all the way around the 360. Be inclusive, obviously, access for all, and be really good connectors. I think these things we know about. Done appropriately, perhaps this can even be the antithesis to the sort of digital revolution we're experiencing. Maybe they can create physical theaters for interaction, for socialization. And to really enable interactions while remaining focused on managing flows and dealing with passenger movement is to realize perhaps that we can't control everything, because sometimes serendipity should be allowed, because evolution perhaps depends on mutation and chance. So on the right-hand side, the things that you should all be familiar, what we want to achieve. And they've increased in terms of pressure upon us. There's so much we want to do. And on the right-hand side, the pressures that we're sort of faced with. So what do we do, Tim? Is this still business as usual? Or perhaps this is a moment where business really is unusual? But before I sort of end with a really gloomy note, sort of share with you this image. This is my favorite interchange at the moment. It's a moment you arrive at the railway station in Venice, Santa Lucia railway station, overlooks this beautiful little church on the other side, San Simone Piccolo. And actually, the functionality of the station interchange is really in the background. It's not in your face, as was mentioned earlier. It's not these arrows pointing you to. It's so natural. It's so flowing. And obviously, it's Venice. But it's a theater that allows your expression to come through and your memories to thrive and your social interaction to take place. So perhaps more of this, please, that we've got to try and achieve, whether it's in Venice or somewhere else. Tim.
Hey, everybody. Tim Kooyers with Jacobs, and when I wrote the introduction of my title that Nicola read, it sounded good, but it came out as a bit of a mouthful. In simple terms, what I do is I lead an initiative to reimagine how we create, finance, and deliver infrastructure projects. So this is moving beyond Hiro talked about some of the challenges faced in delivering a desirable interchange, but how we can take that concept and embed it further in the region to deliver a regional portfolio works. So I'll start explaining our thinking on this, and we'll start at the very beginning. Imagine this is a project. So as we know, most projects start off with a solution to deliver an outcome that's aligned with the regional growth strategy. But we also know that these quickly turn into highly engineered projects that have specified outcomes. What if we resisted that need to deliver these projects in isolation? For instance, we looked at a transport interchange, but linked it with a renewable energy project. It could either be cornerstone demand, or it could be additional commercialization of the interchange asset. You could then continue with that system thinking mindset. System thinking is a theme from the talks you'll note throughout the days here, and create a regional portfolio of works. These would create benefit and revenue streams across the projects. Furthering that mindset, you're looking into cross-sector projects of work. This is quite different from what we do today, where everything is delivered in its sector silos, and it will take thinking beyond those sector silos and also the traditional delivery models. There are groups of us advancing this thinking in the industry, but we don't have a path yet to achieve these aims. What I can tell you are there are certain characteristics that a regional delivery of a regional portfolio of works will have. First, projects will be delivered in stages. You can't do it all at once. And you need to take a strategic pathways approach to adapt your projects as the future unfolds. Projects delivered in earlier stages will also create revenues and benefits that could be fed into future projects. This could either ease the burden of financing costs, but could also feed directly into the funding for the future projects. This is in contrast to what we see today, where the most beneficial projects, those with that great BCR number that we were hearing about, are delivered first and in isolation. This extracts value from the system, and it makes the rest of those projects that much harder to deliver. Instead, it would be taking those profitable projects, those seen as the most beneficial and easiest to fund, and using that high BCR, whatever measurement you take, or high revenue generation, to cross-subsidize those projects that are marginal. And what we find is that those marginal projects tend to have a lot of societal benefit. They're just not measured in the business case figures that we currently have, or in the business models that we have. So it's rethinking that behavioral aspect and how we could deliver things in a portfolio level, but critically creating the commercial structures to realize the benefits and revenues across projects to enable their mutual delivery. Projects delivered in a system will also have economies of scale. This can be in delivery, operations, or network effects. And yes, with economies of scale and delivering multiple projects, you can see an increase of risks. But we're an industry that delivers programs and manages risks. This isn't outside of our realm of expertise. It's taking the appropriate programmatic risk models and applying the appropriate commercial structures to minimize and enable the delivery. It's a big change for what we're doing today. But one of my favorite analogies of innovation was from one of my colleagues. He was at the Detroit Auto Show, and he walked up to what was Chrysler back then, and walked up to the gentleman around the car, and he said, "Oh man, this is a really cool car. But I got a question for you. Why does every concept car look like the Batmobile?" And the guy said, "Yes, that's a good question. They look like the Batmobile today because we need to give people that aspiration of what to strive for. Next year, they may just have the door handle. But you have to create this North Star so we continue on that pathway." To continue on that pathway, it's going to take a couple things. We're going to have a wider lens. We're going to have to maintain this wider lens throughout project creation and project delivery. This is a wider lens beyond traditional sector silos, but also beyond traditional commercial models. We'll need diverse teams. This is in terms of cultures, sectors, specializations, not only to maintain that wider lens, but also for the wide range of skills that are going to be needed for this portfolio delivery. The diverse team will also need to be founded in hyper-collaboration. Relationships that are currently defined as competitors, vendor-supplier, regulators, will need to break out of those traditional transactional mindsets. We'll also need strong leadership from both the public and the private sector. This problem is too big for us all to solve on our own. If you look at our net zero infrastructure requirements, our industry cannot deliver them in its current makeup. We need the convening power to bring people together, to establish these diverse teams, to take this wider lens, to enable them to think differently, and to have the latitude to affect these changes. So it's not going to be easy, But it's something that it is our North Star, and it's what we're striving for. And we're working with various partner organizations to deliver this and looking for more partners to share our thoughts and how we could do so. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to be putting it in the too hard to do category. So it's finding our allies across industry where we could advance this together, make that Batmobile, right? Yeah, so we were put here today, early in the talk, to be a little provocative, share some innovative thinking, get the juices flowing. And our ask is you, as you continue throughout your day, listening to some inspiring ideas, think back at this talk. Think back, how can I create the interchanges of tomorrow, the delivery models of tomorrow, today? Thanks.
I would love, we've got a load of questions actually, so I'm going to go straight to it with these Slido questions. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, definitely.
Excellent, all right. This one's for Tim. How do we bring the owners and operators of public sector infrastructure along this journey alongside industry?
Well, it's a good question, and it is something that it has to be a collaborative approach, as I was saying. For me, what I find, because I've had a lot of these conversations as I go throughout my role, it's finding the appropriate allies within those organizations. These may not be the traditional decision makers that you think will enact that change, but they can be those that are striving to change the industry as you are, and willing to create that change. It's a challenge. Doing something different can put your job on the line in some of these industries, in some of the bodies that we work for. It's the old saying, no one gets fired for hiring McKinsey, right? So it is finding those those allies, and this could happen at any level. If you're at delivery level, managerial level, executive level, finding those allies across organization, establishing those relationships to further the thinking.
Thank you. And don't forget, #interchange for your questions. Systems engineering is not in people's DNA. How do we encourage people to look at the bigger picture?
You're asking an architect that question. Well, actually, I suppose we are conditioned to think continuously at the wider picture. If there are any people out there who do design and have worked with designers, you're constantly being told, oh, but we've got to look beyond the red line. So I think we can certainly be a catalyst for that wider perspective. And the challenge is, how widely do we look at that? Do we look at it locally, regionally, nationally? I guess it depends on the complexity of that particular piece of interchange. And I guess the opportunity is to demonstrate through examples. And there may be examples that are here in the UK, which would be great, but perhaps we shouldn't be ashamed to look at examples elsewhere, because they are the best, I guess, reassuring evidence that perhaps a wider perspective can work and should work. But I'm not sure the problem exists with everybody. I think that's a great question, but I am convinced that there's a majority of people in this room that understands the role of thinking more broadly. So, great question, but I think you're sort of talking to the already converted in the room.
Okay. Did you want to add anything to that at all, Tim?
No, that's great.
All right, okay. I wanted to ask you, is it possible to apply some of the ideas that you've outlined on a smaller scale? Because you gave us some, fantastic big projects, but, what about smaller things locally? Would it still work?
Yeah, definitely. And these are things that we're working on because to provide these steps of confidence. And so some of these smaller scale implementations, which can be at the simple demand creation as the the interchange example, and linking that with the renewable energy source. And there's also working in the smart city space and connectivity, where we've been packaging fiber deployments with smart services and looking at creating a combined business case for that. And we actually did create one for that, and the fiber company is delivering fiber to social housing in Glasgow as we speak. So it's these steps of confidence that we need to take but then we also need to go big, right? You need to start on the big ones and fail fast, figure out what works, and keep going.
Maybe it's also a timescale thing, Nicola. So it's not just about the sort of the size, but the duration over which we might be able to consider systems application. So I think it's been mentioned before, the longer that we can be holding our breath, the greater the chance of delivery. And so it's not sometimes just about the scale.
Right, okay, thank you. Again, hashtag interchange for your questions. Let's go to this one here. There's somebody who's saying there's too much talk, not enough action achieving net zero. How can the industry pick up the pace, delivering meaningful and impactful change for the better? What's your thoughts on that?
I think that's a great question, right? I think a lot of it is collaboration. I think there is role for government Israel to create the correct policy context, and sometimes it's a simple sentence here or there that will enable that investment in speculative technology or new delivery models to bring them to fruition. But it really has to be embedded in everything that you're delivering as part of your projects. We are the people that are delivering the infrastructure of the future. If we don't have net zero embedded in every aspect of what we're doing, we're failing ourselves on that issue. And that's something that I know as Jacobs, we've really taken and doubled down on. And we've made a commitment to have all of our projects have an ESG aspect in the next 5 years. So when we divested our oil and gas business about 5 years ago, we started on this journey. But that's something we're bringing down through our company, and it's within our company DNA. It needs to be within project DNA, and it needs to be within everything that this room is delivering as well.
And possibly, again, in this forum, we might all be thinking about that sort of program ahead, or the project you're involved with now. So they're not necessarily delivering the net zero sort of results at the minute. So I think we might be, in this room again, being very tough on ourselves, because actually, if you look at the things which have been completed, perhaps they can be more evidence of net zero results being achieved. But because I think we're all kind of looking at that next big program of works, we're sort of thinking, well, how are we going to achieve it I suspect, maybe I'm an optimist, I suspect it'll come. But maybe we can be reassured by looking at the things which have been completed more recently and just measuring how we're achieving against those, and we might be more pleasantly surprised.
Hiro, thank you. Tim, thank you. I'm so sorry, but we're out of time. But I want to really thank you for your insights this morning. They've been absolutely fascinating. Let's give them a warm round of applause, everybody. Thank you both. Thank you so much.